Good rhythm.
Hey, everybody. Welcome into the New England Ski Journal Basecamp podcast, sponsored by Country Ski and Sport. I'm your host, Mike Specian, with my co-host,
Keith Pearson.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Gobble, gobble.
It is gobble. What do you... Thanksgiving, man. What do
Yeah.
you think? We're there.
December. We're almost, we're December's like go time. That's the real, that's when I start, how many days do I have? Until anything in November is like preseason.
Yes. December is truly the start of the gobble season.
That one didn't make it though, right?
Our producer. Thanks, Dave.
No problem. It was supposed to be a turkey. It's a weird sounding turkey, and maybe he was.
It was a wild one.
Yeah.
That's not the one in the barn.
I truly was going to go under the table going hunting season.
I didn't wear my orange.
Exactly, but we're truly into ski season now.
The bigger resorts are opening.
Yeah, the big resorts are opening. I remember my first time in Boston. I shouldn't say my first time in Boston. My brother was living in Ulster, and he's quite a bit older. But my parents brought me in with them, and we had Thanksgiving dinner. And I brought skis with me. I was like 16 years old. And I was super excited to go up to Killington and ski. And guess what? That was a long time ago, and they didn't have any snow to ski on. Nobody did. Can you believe that?
It's hard to think about now, what the advances in snowmaking that you can bring late, mid-November into play. And we understand, there were all October opening dates back in the past, but you could also get skunked more often than not.
Yeah, I can tell you I have skied at Killington on October 6th before.
But you've also, they've probably been skunked.
They've been skunked more than not. From that standpoint, we're still pulling off World Cups. But I saw something, it was online somewhere. Back in the mid-'60s, Killington actually was open for 183 days pre-snowmaking.
That's wild.
I mean, Eric Wilbur and I used to talk about this all the time, and you and I will numerous times from here on in. But we have a climate issue, and things have changed. Our winters have gotten shorter. I mean, there's no two ways about it.
It's hit or miss now. It's kind of like baseball. Strikeout, home run. Strikeout, home run. The idea of 3 to 5 inches coming through every now and again, it's kind of gone out the window. Everything's big bombo genesis nor'easter or 60 degrees. And it bleeds up north, too.
It's one way or the other. But you know what? When there is snow, and we're in December, and the snow gods start to shine on us, knock on wood.
Yes.
Okay.
Praise Allah.
Yeah, exactly. When it does happen, Northern Vermont gets the lion's share of it.
Particularly that place just under the border.
Do you remember when I asked Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Okay, about weather up at Jay Peak. I asked Tim if the Eastern Townships got the same thing, and he wasn't sure. But I'll tell you what, Jay is this anomaly. I mean, Sugarbush Stowe will get a foot, and Jay will get 2 out of nowhere.
It's fun. It's fun to take advantage of. Tim certainly gave us the scientific explanation. Being closer to 4,000 feet, certain places were holding that. Those Eastern Township mountains don't have quite that elevation. But yeah, it's one of those things where Jay is a special place because you can spend an entire day and not be on a groom trail.
Yeah, if you work your way around the mountain and use the trees, you can have theoretically fresh tracks all day long, which you can't do in the back bowls of Al because of the amount of people. Okay, it's very difficult to get away with that. But Jay, you actually can because of the way the mountain is set up. But Jay can also be, I can tell you some of the windiest, coldest days I've ever had on a lift. Where, Jay?
You know when you cross that ridge when you're going up the freezer.
Well, yeah. But
right at the top of Expo, and you cross that bridge, it's tough.
Well, when you get off the highway coming out of Boston and you start to go to Jay and you go, geez, they said they got a lot of snow. Where is it? And you're going through farmland and, there's 6 inches here or whatever, and there's drifts everywhere because it's wide open.
Yep.
And you start to climb into Jay, Vermont, and all of a sudden, the snowbanks just start climbing as if you're in Alpenthal, Washington.
Yeah, it just seems like once you hit, the center of Jay, at the Village Inn there, those banks for those next couple miles to the main entrance, they get steep really quick.
Unlike anything else
it's
in
hard.
New England.
It's hard to explain unless you've been there.
So, but we're going to take a little visit up at Jay Peak today, which I will adamantly call the snowiest spot in New England.
That's fair.
Okay. And we're going to have Steve Wright, who is a Bostonian, or from the Boston area, I should say, and who is the president and general manager of Jay Peak. So we'll be right back with Steve Wright and Jay Peak, Vermont. The Button Ski Hanger is a patented ski storage fixture that safely stores alpine skis regardless of length, width, or shape. This means that your fat powder skis can now be stored next to your narrower carving skis, your race skis, and your kid skis. For more information, visit their website, buttonskirack.com. The Button Ski Hanger is also available for purchase at amazon.com. So make your purchase today. The Button Ski Hanger is simply better for your skis. Welcome back, everybody, to the Basecamp podcast. Now joining us from the snowiest spot in New England, Jay Peak, Vermont. We have Steve Wright, President and General Manager. How you doing, Steve?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good. How close do you feel? I mean, we're almost there, right?
I feel very close.
This is a big, this podcast is actually going on a really important day for you guys.
Yeah, we're getting ready to roll things out on the triple here. We're all happy and relatively fat from Thanksgiving at this point, so we're really ready to turn our jet triple and get things moving for the season.
That is awesome. Well, we had somebody you know very well, Tim Kelly, on to fire off the fall season, and we talked about Jay a little bit. Can you give us a hint as to what your version of the Jay Cloud is?
My version of the Jay Cloud is simply sort of reporting back against what it does, right? He probably mentioned orographic uplift.
Yes, he did.
And he probably forecasted that I would mention orographic uplift. But it's, essentially a real weather phenomena where those storms roll up in the first, sort of main area of mass that these storms run into is Jay Peak, slows things down and lets these storms sit. At this point, we haven't seen that happen. We generally see that start to happen as you get into December. So we'll lay in wait on that.
Well, we know Snowbird gets 500 inches on average a year. What is the snow history up there at Jay?
Yeah, it's, on a few inches on either side of 350, 355 inches, somewhere in that range. Last year we were pulling into the finish and we were behind a bit on our numbers, and then April hammered it. We had about 70 inches in the month of April, which coincided nicely with the eclipse and made for, from a financial perspective, the best April we've had in our history. So, it generally will meter out, right? We'll either get whacked early it'll chill out in the middle and we'll get whacked again at the end, or, it'll be a slow start and then a strong middle and end. But it generally will net out at somewhere in that 350, 360 inch range.
Awesome.
As someone who put money in your pockets on Eclipse Day, that was a fantastically run program you guys put together.
It was awesome.
Appreciate you and your ducats. They helped a lot. But that was a great event. We all talk about it here as probably being one of the best events, if not the best event we pulled off. And we've given serious consideration to having another one this year, minus the actual eclipse. We were just going to have basically the same festive atmosphere and not have the actual event.
Hey, actually, when I was up there was a wedding up there.
Yeah.
Did they book it before anybody kind of really figured out like what was going on that day? Like they booked it, sounded like they booked it years in advance.
2.5 years in advance.
Were you even aware of any eclipse that day?
I was because of my friend Tom Chassie, who used to run Attitash out east, and he had the eclipse out west at the resort that he runs out there, and said, be ready for this. It's an eclipse. I know you're not going to expect a big deal out of this thing, but you're going to hammer it. And all I can tell you is to have everything in the world available to sell to your guests, because they will buy them. And they did. And
that's awesome.
Did, so thank you.
Might have a trinket or two. Yeah. Hey, considering everything that went on with the E5 scandal, you've now been purchased. You're out of receivership, and Pacific Group took you over. You've been here throughout that whole transition. How big of a relief is it to be at the point that you're at now?
Well, I mean, I can also say it was the first time I've ever had anybody dovetail from the Eclipse right into EV5. Well done there.
I gotta work you up.
Yeah, it's a relief on a few fronts, right? It's a relief that we're out of receivership and more into a growth mode. Like when we were in receivership, it was mostly, protect free cash flow, protect EBITDA, and make sure that the multiple that we ultimately get for the resort stays as high as possible, which usually is, cash conservation, right? It's not a time that you're doing a lot to propel yourself forward, which we did. We got a great number for the place, but we were also picked up by, Pacific Group Resorts that shares a similar mentality to who Jay Peak has always been, both in and out of receivership, in terms of, a business that cares about its employees, cares about its community, and wants to grow in a way that is in sync with all of that. And not needing to make every single dollar immediately, have a longer term vision for how the place succeeds.
Sure. I mean, Pacific Group is a great operator. I mean, we were all fearful of who was going to take Jay. And when I heard the news, it was the best case scenario.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't even like to mention their name because they don't like their name mentioned. The fact that we are owned by a company that wants to stay not only behind the curtain, but behind the curtain and out of the building and around the corner, is emblematic of the fact that they want their resorts, running the resorts in a way that they know can succeed, and in a way that is in alignment with their brand, right? They don't, they're not a company that needs to have their name up in lights. They much prefer the resorts to operate independently and to be successful. Now we still get support from them, both kind of intellectual and obviously financial. But in terms of how we run the resort and the decisions that we make, those are left squarely in our hands and our laps.
How long have you been there, Steve?
This will be my 21st winter.
Wow. I mean, congratulations.
Killington for 10 years before that.
Yeah, I knew that.
Yeah.
You are a fierce believer in the ski industry. It's fun to watch you on Facebook, by the way. You're provocative in a good way. Where do you see the industry going, and where do you see Jay's role in the whole here in New England?
Well, I mean, in the industry as a whole, you can see that with what Killington has recently gone through in terms of the reorganization under independent management, and they've become one of, if not the largest truly independently operated resorts in North America, that there is expanding room for all sorts of management and organization of these ski companies, whether it is a publicly traded conglomerate, a big theoretically eventually public conglomerate, some of these medium-sized groups like Boyne, who do a great job, or some smaller operators that are under one umbrella that do a great job, or the mom and pops. There's kind of justification for each tranche of ownership in terms of being the right way to go. And I think ultimately the skier and the snowboarder benefits in a bunch of different ways at a bunch of those different tranches, right? They go to a big Vail-owned resort who's lots of zeros in the revenue that they throw at the end of the year, and they've got fast lifts and snow, and sure it's a little bit on the spendy end of things, but they get a great product and they put that out there. And then you've got some other ends of the spectrum that maybe don't operate the same way operationally, but have a much more welcoming pricing strategy to get people in the front door. There's really a little bit for everybody. I think that at some point there needs to be better alignment with how do we get new people into the sport. Right now we trade skiers and snowboarders back and forth by virtue of how well we steal them, how well we cannibalize them. There has been no organized, orchestrated learn to ski campaign in the industry since Ski It to Believe It with Chris Everett and somebody else back in the early 90s when Les was trying to organize that. They had brought the ski industry together. They had come up with a wonderful marketing campaign, funded the hell out of it, and the first Iraq war landed on the night that the commercials were supposed to drop. Since that point, nothing else has happened with respect to the industry coming together. And my opinion on that, and there are people who vehemently disagree with me, but my opinion on that is that if we were able to come together with a unified product that we went out to the public telling them why there's such a compelling reason to learn how to ski with a price that was equally compelling, we do ourselves a great service.
I agree 100% with that sentiment.
Yeah. Jay
has embraced the trees. Was that culture there before you arrived, or is it? Yeah, it's.
Yeah, I was. Bill Stenger really was the biggest supporter of that, trying to expand the train offerings by virtue of saying, hey, listen, if the trail is open and there's a cluster of woods in between two open trails, go have at it. And that's really where I think in the East, that's what we've made our bones with, is that not only the natural snow, but the gladed product that we have here.
What have you been able to put into the mountain during the off season?
We're trying out some new fan guns. We've got a TA, we've got an SMI, and a DMAC that we're trying those out to see which ones perform best for us. We've never been a fan gun resort, but we've acknowledged that they have a place in our arsenal, so we're looking at that. We've got a major snowmaking pipeline project that will shortly be underway. We're still looking at replacing the Bonnie. That has not happened yet. We have a couple 100 or so new guns that we've got sprinkled across the place, and then a ton of maintenance capital. I mean, this place is a big. It's not a huge resort, but operationally it is very complex. With an ice rink, a 60,000 square foot indoor water park, 16 restaurants, over 1,000 rooms, an indoor climbing facility, a movie theater. There's a bunch of moving parts. A soccer turf athletic field, a bunch of different strategies across those parts. So the maintenance capital that you put on that, which doesn't show up in a brochure generally, but is still critical to make sure that the place runs at a high level, that number is pretty big every year.
Well, you mentioned the water park, the ice rink, the hotel. That has all come to fruition over the last 15 years, would you say?
Yeah.
How has that changed your ability to draw families, to draw continuous revenue into the resorts?
Well, we when we were sort of spitballing all this stuff, we just sort of reasoned that the water park would be the game changer for us, right? Big, expensive indoor water park that would give New Englanders and Bostonians and Canadians the confidence to book early in the booking cycle, because they'd know that if the weather went to hell, which it can happen up here, that they'd have something meaningful to still do on the vacation. And that certainly does happen. The month of April, we do a ton of splash and stay business of people that are not interested in ski vacations at all. And they drive from as far away as the Mid-Atlantic and Toronto, which are both in that 6 to 8 hour drive range,
Right,
to come to a ski resort to just use the water park, which we never thought would happen. We didn't anticipate that. The biggest change to our business model has been the hockey rink. And it's because, we get somewhere around 40 or 42 weekends of hockey business a year that ranges from 16 to 18 teams per weekend. Each of those teams is taking 12 to 15 rooms. So you've got 300, 350 rooms of guaranteed occupancy that is coming regardless of what the weather does, right? So that's a big thing. You offer that, you go to any ski resort and say, I can take half of your lodging inventory and I can lock it in August for the winter that is not impacted by weather whatsoever, and they'd be all over it. And that's really has impacted us. And what we found is difficult, and there's sort of an art to this, is how much inventory do you give over to hockey teams during the winter? Because almost none of those teams are buying lift tickets, and many of those teams are at discounted ADRs and room rates just because of the nature of hockey. Whereas the skiing, snowboarding guests, we get a higher ADR. They're all buying lift tickets. They don't bring their food with them. So we're making more from that guest, but they're exposed to the weather. So it's very likely that if we get inclement weather, they're going to push that vacation. So we've got to be very cautious about how much inventory we give to each tranche. And it differs by weekend. There are some weekends the tournament will only be 6 teams. And then there's other weekends we take 18 and the tournament starts Thursday.
So you mentioned weather. I thought Jay Peak, it snowed all night. It was sunny bluebird Colorado skies all day with no wind. I mean, that's the brochure I saw in Jay Peak.
You are completely correct. And next question.
I love the fact that up on the jet, the sign that says the wind still blows.
I've got that in my office here too.
That should be
Good
down
reminder.
that should be down at Provisions.
It's right next to the banner that says the dead of winter still has a nice ring to it. And that's really kind of the mentality that we have up here, is like the weather is going to be tough. And, sometimes it's not for the faint of heart. You get on the flyer and it's, blowing from the west, and it's cold and it's snowing. And even on those days the wind isn't blowing, the temps can get aggressively cold here, but that's sort of what you pay. That's the price that you pay, for 360 inches of snow a year, is that a lot of that inclement weather is in the jet wash of these big storms that come in and leave. And that's what you see behind it.
And that's why you go to the trees, so you can see and warm yourself up.
Yeah.
I like it.
Hey, how important is the Canadian market, and like when you balance it between the Boston market versus the Montreal market?
I mean, for us, it's not. You've got 4 or 5 million people less than 2.5 hours away, so you can treat that market as a day market. Boston's not a day market for us for the most part,
right?
Except for there's a couple of lovable zanies that we have out there who drive for the day from as far away as Providence. But for the most part, that's a lodging based market for us. So Boston is, and it's obviously super important. The Canadian market, there's a huge history of Canadians who have very deep relationships here in the J area. It's always been their mountain. Now there's a discount on that currency for us because we take cash at par for non-margin products like lift tickets and water park tickets. So, on $100 ticket, we're only taking 75 to the bank. But if we didn't offer that at par option, we reason that the index of Canadians would likely drop that visit the resort, because there are mountains that are 40 minutes from us that rhyme with Stowe and Smuggler's Notch, that don't get the level of Canadian business that we do, and it's because of the pricing approach.
It's amazing. Like during the midweeks, you'll hear more French than English in the lodge.
Yeah.
Which is great. I like your pricing approach because theoretically you're as close to the border as you can be. I mean, and you're up against Owl's Head and Sutton and everybody else up that neck of the woods. So there's 2 trams left in New England, or that are in New England, not left, but Canon, of course, is in the mode of, needing to make upgrades. And the talk was maybe the tram was going away, and it's not, from what I hear with the state now. How important is that tram for Jay Peak and its image as a whole?
Well, it's a big part. It's an iconic part of the brand, right? As a brand treatment, as an icon of the brand, it's important. We had this conversation as we were dipping into receivership. The tram needed a $6 million upgrade, which, if you've never been into receivership, you very quickly realize that $6 million items, they don't happen.
Yep.
But we acknowledge the fact that it was our way to the top. And we had to make a decision then. Do we spend the $6 million on the tram, or do we, triple that number and put a an 8-pack or a 10-pack gondola in there, which is light enough so that it probably wouldn't run much either. The tram, it blows down a lot, but it's heavy, and something lighter would certainly blow down a lot more. It's something that Jay Peak has become known for. Operationally, it's a challenge, not only from running it on very windy, very weather inclement days, but also staffing, right? Finding a lift mechanic and a lift engineering team that understands what they're doing with trams. And, I feel like we've got the best in the business. We've guys that have, all the guys that work that tram have been here 20, 25, 30 years. And they're worth their weight in gold here.
Sure. You mentioned earlier about Bonaventure in the near future. What would you replace that with?
I'd replace it probably with a detached quad. There've been some people talking 6s and that stuff, and we don't need that capacity. Honestly, it's fancy and shiny, and a lot of resorts are just buying 6s because that's what their brothers and sisters are doing. They don't need the capacity either. And, there are a lot of lift manufacturers that are making pricing on 6s very, very attractive, even compared to detached quads. But for us, it's more of a, we need the right tool for the problem, and that's a detached quad.
Sure. So you have a sister resort in New England, in Ragged.
Sisters, yeah.
Yeah. Brother, sister. Are there pass programs between the two?
Yeah, you can, there are pass products that you have access to when you buy a season's pass. At Ragged, you get a certain number of days here at Jay Peak. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's important because Ragged is definitely, you talked about accessibility to the customer base. Ragged is a great day trip for the average Boston, really Providence consumer. And we had Eric on when he took over. It was a great talk about Ragged. How has the IndyPass affected you guys?
Well, it's been huge for us. I mean, we're the #1 resort redeemed on Indy for the last 2 consecutive years, maybe 3. We jumped on when we went into receivership, but really we jumped on when the pandemic landed and they closed the Canadian border. So we had plenty of capacity, and we were the last on the line in New England. So if you were going to ignore the pandemic travel restrictions, you were probably going to ignore them at Killington or someplace south of that. You weren't going to drive all the way up to Jay, which we saw very little activity during that period. So we said, let's jump on this pass and try to fill up some of this capacity. And it was a good move. It was like I said, it's important to us now. We like the other resorts that are on there. The management of Indy is solid. We like those guys, and we think that like these other ownership configurations provide a counterpoint. So do these pass configurations, and Indy for us was the right one. We've talked with, I've talked with the folks at Alterra and Vail about jumping on those things, and it just doesn't make sense for us.
Sure. Are you able to track whether that IndyPass skier is booking rooms and stuff? Any idea on that?
Yeah, there's an index of them that not only buy rooms here, but also trade up to a season pass product in following years, right? They start out, they get 2 days here, they realize what this place is about, they connect with the vibration of this place, and they turn into season pass holders in following years.
That's fantastic. That's what it's supposed to do.
Right.
I want to say it's the West Mountain, right? That they've always talked about.
West Bowl.
West Bowl, yeah. Any chance in the near future? No. Come on. Got to find your way over there yourself, I guess.
I think that there was a lot of hope for that to happen in years past. Like when I started here, the trail map files that I was given when I was in marketing was just this blob that said, coming soon. Soon being subjective, but I think we did the homework on this when we got into receivership and realized what it would take to build the type of experience out there that we wanted to. Just the utility costs, getting power, sewer, water. There are a lot of zeros on there. The ROI on something like that, just that's one of the limitations at being with a company that you have to justify the dollars being spent as having a return. Is that you have to justify the dollars being spent to have a return. I myself prefer to operate that way as an operator and a general manager. I like that sort of mentality. I don't like to spend money because I have access to it. I like to spend it because I think there's a return against it. And I think that there is a solution out in the West Bowl at some point in the future. I just don't think it's going to be this polished experience that we might have thought that it was going to be, with townhomes and a hotel and multiple lifts. It might be, a Clydesdale, a buggy and a rope tow. I don't know, but it's going to be something that's on brand with us and something that we can get a return on.
How hard, with something of that nature, how hard is it to get these things through Vermont at this point? I know it's very difficult with the state government.
It's not easy. It's part of the Vermont brand is, the fact that you can drive up the interstate and not see billboards and development, and the natural environment is still respected and acknowledged. I think that there's a lot that government could do to make sensible projects easier to get through the system, get through Act 250. And I think with the leadership, with the the change in the supermajority at the Vermont level being taken away, I think we're going to see some more sensible creation of policies that impact ski areas, but also housing, which we desperately need in the state of Vermont. I think we're going to see some stuff move through.
With that statement, how is the employee housing and affordable housing? What have you done about that? Because it's a major issue for all resorts.
Yeah, well, luckily we've got 1,000 rooms here, right? We're the biggest lodging-based ski resort east of the Mississippi, and probably one of the biggest just sort of contiguous lodging offerings anywhere in the hospitality world in New England. So we were able to take 150 or so units out of warm retail inventory and give it over to employee housing. Now, financially, it's not a long-term strategy because we're losing a hell of a lot of money by not having that available to book Christmas week. But if we didn't do it, we wouldn't have the employees to service the rest of the resort. So in a short-term capacity, we're very grateful that we have the opportunity to do that. But across the medium and long term, it just isn't sustainable. So the state needs to figure out ways to work with private business to get this stuff built, because it should not be my responsibility. It shouldn't be these individual businesses' responsibility to create housing for their employees. These communities should have that housing stock, and the state of Vermont needs to continue figuring out ways to motivate builders to build that level stock and not just trophy homes. And I think that they're starting to do that. And I think that they've calibrated themselves in the legislature to do that going forward. So I'm hopeful, at least.
You mentioned, like the rink, the water park, which was obviously a game changer, and the athletic facility that's down the road. Any other types of projects like that down the line?
I mean, we are the most amenity diverse resort you're going to find anywhere. And we may update the water park to include different types of rides at some point if we can do that, although the physical footprint is a little limiting in there. We have, added events and programming around the campus to try to appeal to different, demographics and try to get people up here during shoulder periods and slower timeframes of the year. But in terms of adding major amenities here, it's just, it really would be difficult to impossible to do that just based on the limitations we have with respect to geography.
Sure. One last question for me, Steve. There was a lot of, road cutting and stuff up in the trees off of Big J and stuff. Has all of that settled down? I haven't heard anything in the news for quite a while.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen anything. You always hear rumors in the lift lines and whispers and this and that, but we keep our eye on that stuff pretty well because, the last joker that went up there and cut that, what we call affectionately the jailhouse chute over on Big J, accessed it, at times from our property. So we're pretty well on the lookout for that sort of thing now. And we're hopeful that people don't do that because there's plenty of skiing here for everybody. You don't need to go out and do that.
Right. No, I agree. I mean, everybody thinks everything belongs to them.
Oh, absolutely.
Unfortunately. And, unfortunately in this day and age when you can say anything you want or do anything you want, I just hope it stays that way.
All right. Got to ask you, after 2 feet, where are you going first?
I'm not telling you. I'll tell you offline. How about I do that?
How about of marked spots? We'll keep the secret stashes secret. But
I mean, there's a couple of different places. Beaver Pond and beyond Beaver Pond, Andres out in that direction is very good. I mean, when you get 2 feet here, you can pretty much have fun on just about anything. Can-Am, JFK, some of the more traveled areas. Timbuk is fantastic. Deliverance, really, really good. And you got to have snow. You got to have good coverage in there. And you got to have better knees than I do if you want to make more than one run. Because and that shit, I'm one and out a lot of times, depending upon who I'm skiing with and how hard they're charging. But yeah, 2 feet makes the place ski real well everywhere.
Well, you talk about 2 feet. I think it's awesome for 2 feet, but I think the best time to ski, Jay, is in the springtime when you can follow the sun and go from woods to woods where it's just silky.
Yeah.
I mean, the snow's deep. You just pick your line and just keep moving around the mountain.
Yeah, it's a comfortable time of year. You get into the spring, and really at a place like Jay that has such aggressively harsh weather mid-season, when things warm up into the single digits come March for us, and the sun starts to get a little higher, it makes things a hell of a lot more tolerable,
Well, and it's fun because, the lines are already there. You don't have to worry about coverage. You just let them run, and you can take high-speed laps in the trees at that point.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, with the last couple of years, mid-March to mid-April has been the money stretch for the last couple of years. And a lot of people punt and they get through that third week in March and they're done and they're on to other pursuits. But this place, that stretch of, like I said, mid-March to mid-April has been fantastic the last couple of years.
Are you at the point now where, say, up until the first week through the first weekend of April is now still prime season, as opposed to where so many of those mountains used to be that third weekend of March? Oh, that's now our shoulder season.
Yeah, it's a good question. We still price that season as you get to the third week of March, and then we back off for the accelerator in terms of pricing, which is another reason why our numbers have really grown from the end of March to the end of April, really, because we close, generally around Mother's Day. But the pricing backs off, the weather moderates. We've gotten a lot of snow, and many of the people here in April, like I said, are those water parkers that aren't skiing, so that you're skiing right onto a lift, in terms of the traffic. So there's a lot of factors that conspire in April to make it awfully attractive to come here.
Well, I've got to ask you, the April part, when the snow is deep, when the skiing is really good, how how do we change the consumer to realize that December is not the best time to ski, that April
Well,
is?
yeah, I mean, it's a good question too. I don't know that I want to do that because I don't need this place tumbleweeding around in December either. I
No, I
mean,
know that.
but your point is valid in that it's more how do you create a mindset in downcountry skiers that April is still a very valid time to be coming up into the mountains. But realistically, you're fighting against, and I've been doing this my whole career in the ski industry. You're in April, you're fighting against shit happening in Massachusetts that's soccer leagues are starting up and kids are
Yep.
looking for their cleats. And unless you're a dedicated skier, you just don't see April. It's why the index of Montrealers that are here in April spikes because they can get here very easily and they're a dedicated set of skiers, and that combination works well.
I agree. Well, Steve, we want to thank you for coming on. I can't wait to get up there. And this year, I'm going to pull you out of the office. 2 years ago, you were busy, but I'm going to pull you out, and we're going to go make some turns.
Excellent. I did want to say one more thing. Maybe we can work this in somewhere. Is I wanted to talk about this mission affordability program that we have up here because we think
it's all yours. The line's yours.
Yeah, we think it's meaningful. We had a conversation, a year ago, a little more than a year ago. We talked about what inflation was doing at that time and how it was, it wasn't impacting the destination skiers yet, but we reasoned that it was going to. It was that last tranche of hospitality guests that it gets impacted when prices start to jump. So we decided to freeze our window rates, freeze our pass rates, and drop rates in a lot of our areas from the climbing wall rates, spa rates, food and beverage items. There's a couple of hundred items that we dropped what we were charging people on a year-over-year basis. And we reasoned that while that wouldn't really make a hell of a lot of difference in a skier's mindset, right? You might save 50, 80 bucks compared to the year prior. The act of us doing that, just us acknowledging that our guests were going through this, was a thing JP should do. It was kind of a respectful thing that we should do, and that we reason we might see some additional volume because of it. And the impact it's had so far on getting our phones to ring. Like, I'm the president of the Vermont Ski Areas Association, the chairman of the board there, and I've talked with folks there, and early bookings into the winter are very light in a lot of areas because I think inflation is not going to stop skiers from coming, but I think it will shrink the booking window. I think it's going to make them say, I'm still going to ski, but I'm going to make damn sure that the conditions are going to be prime before I do that. So for us, our booking numbers are still high single digits, low double digits ahead of the year prior. So we have seen some insulation against that inflation impact, and we reason that it's the mission affordability piece that is resonating with the consumer.
That's unbelievable because the person that leads the charge here is going to win.
Yeah, ultimately.
The 4-pack that you did, how popular is that?
They're real popular. I mean, to have a ticket product that's basically $70 a ticket that not only does not has no restrictions, no blackout dates, but is completely transferable. You can use them all on the same day. You can use one a day and give them to your wife. You can give them to your friend. It has been phenomenal, and we've run another product out with that ticket product. That's a 4-pack of lessons that you can buy early in advance. It comes out to about 20 bucks a lesson. You can buy those in advance. You give them to friends and family. They can redeem it whenever they want. It's the same thing. And it's really kind of a nod towards, even a place like JP has to be responsible for getting new skiers and new snowboarders into the sport. We've got to do our part, which, I'll end on this notion that coordinating that message across the industry, it doesn't take anybody particularly smart to know that's going to have an impact. If you're able to do that, just like the golf industry did. And this is my other rant, just like the golf industry did when Tiger Woods was at his apex, right? The PGA went out and marketed golf, and you could see everything from new golfers, hard goods sales to golf course creation spiked. We have the greatest skier of a generation in Michaela Schifrin, who should be the ambassador of this sport, telling every single person, whether they're a 14-year-old girl or a 50-year-old man, that they should be taking up the sports of skiing and riding. we'll never have a better ambassador in our lifetime, for sure. So if we could get a coordinated message and a coordinated offer in the hands of the best skier in our generation, how would that not impact us in a good way?
A huge way. So SIA used to have a program. How do we get SIA, Ski Industries of America, to actually push a program like that than some of the other stuff that's being done?
You got to get the resorts on board. That's the key to the kingdom.
Gotcha.
Ultimately, they have to be the ones that say, right now, some of the pushback has been, well, I'm a big enough resort. People that are going to learn to ski are going to gravitate to me eventually. Why would I pay money for that?
Short-sightedness.
Well, I think so, because we're already seeing, at some point, you can't share the same skiers anymore. And if you look at the numbers, that we've had a pretty good run the last few years of getting new people into the sport, but there's some diminishing returns there. And I think we need to have a longer view of things than just, how does this impact my wallet today?
Has that, that spike following COVID, has that kind of flattened out?
We'll see what happens this year. This will be the real year to tell. We had a big spike afterwards. We moderated last year. Now let's see what's gonna happen this year.
Excellent.
Well, we want to thank you for coming on. Everything that you and the team are doing up at J Peak, because it is one of the best in New England, and you have a product that we all need to enjoy. And don't stop doing it. And thanks for making it more affordable rather than less affordable. So,
Amen. Thank you.
Not a problem. We will see you up at J. And that was Steve Wright from J Peak.
If you want to be inspired and informed on everything about the New England ski and outdoor scene, then you need to check out skijournal.com. Skijournal.com delivers daily content on breaking industry news, tips, gear, dining, travel, entertainment, as well as all archived episodes of the Emmy-nominated New England Ski Journal TV show and the Basecamp podcast. And don't forget to subscribe to New England Ski Journal, the longest-running regional ski magazine in the country. New England Ski Journal's award-winning writers and photographers bring all 4 seasons to your door with best-in-class coverage on skiing and the outdoors. Log on to skijournal.com and click on the subscribe button to get New England Ski Journal mailed to you today. New England Ski Journal is a Siemens Media publication. Siemens Media. Inspiring, informative, insightful.
No problem. Welcome back to the Basecamp podcast. It was great having Steve Wright on. Unfortunately, we did not get any of his secret stashes. Are we going to get any of yours?
Well, I can tell you that I am extremely disappointed. Does he not know who we are? Okay. Come on, Steve.
And doesn't he know us, our audience? They're just as diehard as he is. We tried.
We tried. You know what? I don't think there's much bad at Stowe. I mean, oh my God. You can kill that one, okay, Dave? I don't think there's much bad at Stowe.
Okay.
Woo.
Just pick up where we are.
Do we want to start from the top? I mean, we're only...
Yeah, let's start over.
Yeah, let's start over from the beginning. Welcome back to the Basecamp podcast. It was great having Steve Wright on with us, though it would have been nice if he had given us a little something about, his secret stashes.
That is incredibly disappointing, Steve. I mean, influencers like Keith and I are, okay, take that one. Don't you want to give them to us? It's like giving us a ski that isn't coming out for 2 years. Don't you want us on it?
That's right. Give us a little taste. But Jay it's a special place. It just keeps snowing, and he uses the same scientific terminology that Tim uses. Granted, Tim's probably drilled the same spiel that he gave us on the J Cloud.
Yeah, he did. And Jay is an incredibly awesome spot. There truly is not better snow in New England period, or in Quebec. There's nothing better than Jay Peak. But I think the cool thing about Jay Peak is that it really offers something to everybody. I mean, you can be a friggin' hardcore, hard charging, go ski the face, which if you haven't skied it, I suggest you do. My son at 8 years old, I took him off the face. You know, I was a little bit nervous, and all of a sudden he took off and he was gone. I'm going, okay. You know, it's fun to see people do that. And, you know, the tree skiing, you know, there's great tree skiing in a lot of locations in Maine where it's been cut. But Jay is the originator. As he said, Bill Stenger embraced allowing people to ski between. The original is right there.
Yeah, and they embraced it, and they've run with it, and those people that enjoy it have flocked back year after year after year, and they've told their friends, and they've brought them to their own little secret spots.
Yeah, there's so many little nooks and crannies, and you just have to know where they're at. There's some, you know.
Even the nameplates are perfectly suitable for 95% of us.
Yeah, well, exactly. But even the intermediate skier, you know, he brought up Beaver Pond, beyond Beaver Pond. Those aren't super steep, crazy. I mean, there are some really tight lines going into certain spots, but those are accessible to virtually everybody.
Yep.
And it's just, once you get in there, you feel comfortable, you feel excited, and, you know, it's a totally different nirvana.
It is, and you don't feel like it's so often when you're on, you know, a tight groomer, you know, you're just wondering when that person's going to come bombing around a roller or something like that. You never feel that way up there when you're in the trees.
I would agree. I mean, you know, my challenge to Steve and the crew up there this year is, how do you become the last running lift in New England, being so far north? I know it's not a great ROI, but now with Killington not being able to keep Superstar going, come on, Steve, let's make it happen.
That's right. It's there to be had if they want it, or if Mother Nature allows it.
If Mother Nature allows it. He talked about late season last year. I was not up there last year because I was coming off a brand new knee. But the year before late season, I was up there with a couple ski shop friends. And I'll tell you, late season up at Jay is sort of like a dream.
So mid, I think like the idea of that end of March for most places. I've said, you know, like Loon, Waterville, Cannon. That's kind of my area. That's the middle of April there.
Yeah.
Those are the same types of conditions. You know, the snow's softening up, and you know the sun's great. Is there any place better than to kick back in an Adirondack than the Tower Bar?
I agree. I agree. It's an amazing spot. Two things I took off of this interview. Number one, this is Jay Peak, and they do have some of the best advanced skiing in New England. But he was adamant that we need to refocus to learn to ski.
And it is a good place to learn to ski.
Yes.
You know, it is the difficulty with Jay, and I think it's for that beginner intermediate, like that second stage skier, but it is a perfect spot for the beginner skier because with the covered carpets at both lodges, and what is the double that goes through the condos down?
I don't know the name of it.
Yeah, I don't know the name of it, but I can think of it. I can picture it, and then to the right of Taxi. It's a big spot for beginners,
Mm-hmm.
and let's put it this way: if you're a beginner, are you going hard charging from 9 to 4?
No, you're going out in the morning, and maybe going to
The water park?
the water park or the spa. But the other thing I took from him, and I was cutting him off, and he said he had one more thing, and I think this is truly, truly important, is that they froze prices and actually lowered them. I mean, that is absolutely outstanding in this day and age of $300 lift tickets.
Right. Yeah, you don't need to wring every single dollar out of your consumer at every possible chance. Give them an opportunity to come back for a second weekend later in the year if they had a good time that first weekend.
Exactly. Guess what? Skiing was never meant to be just for the 1%. Skiing was supposed to be a pastime for all of us.
True.
So, but that's what I got out of it. And, Steve Wright, thank you and your team for everything you're doing up there at Jay.
It's great what they've been able to do over the past few years. The person that doesn't focus on the news around ski areas would never know what they went through. Because
exactly.
It's the hotel went up, all the amenities continued to grow. They built the place out well, and without feeling clustered. You would never know like what they went through with the whole E5 issues.
Thank God that's behind us, and we're into December. There's a great ski season ahead of us, and Jay Peak should be on all of our radar screens.
Absolutely. And that's this edition of the Basecamp podcast. He's Mike Specian. I'm Keith Pearson. Have a good day.
New England Ski Journal's Basecamp is a Siemens Media podcast. Siemens Media. Inspiring, informative, insightful.